Kine comes from the Greek word kinesis, meaning movement. Kinetic energy is the energy of motion, as opposed to potential energy, the kind of energy held by a stretched elastic band. Kinetic art is art that has moving parts, such as Alexander Calder's famous mobiles. And cinema, the art of moving pictures, actually comes from the same kine root as well. Kinesiology, the scientific study of human movement. With a kinesiology degree in hand, she landed a job as a rehab therapist for patients following heart surgery. Kinesiologists study the acquisition of motor skills, the mechanical aspects of movement, and the body's responses to physical activity. A kinesiologist may work in a public school fitness program, design exercise programs for people with and without disabilities, or work with patients recovering from disease, accidents, and surgery. As a field of research, kinesiology focuses particularly on the mechanics of muscular activity. Hyperkinetic, 1. Relating to or affected with hyperactivity. 2. Characterized by fast-paced or frantic activity. Noises Off is a hyperkinetic stage farce that moves at a breathless pace for a full hour and a half. Since the prefix hyper means above, beyond, see hyper, hyperkinetic describes motion beyond the usual. The word is usually applied to children, and often describes the condition of almost uncontrollable activity or muscular movements called attention deficit/hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. Kids with ADHD are usually not just hyperkinetic but also inattentive, forgetful, and flighty. Though they're often treated with drugs, many experts believe there are better ways of dealing with the problem. Lots of people now shorten both hyperactive and hyperkinetic to simply hyper. He's been hyper all morning, but usually don't mean it too seriously. Kinescope, a motion picture made from an image on a picture tube. In the archives she turned up several kinescopes of Ernie Kovacs's 1950s show, which she thought had been dumped into New York Harbor decades ago. Kinescope, originally a trademark for the cathode ray tube in a TV, later became the name for a film of a TV screen showing a live broadcast. In order for a program to be seen beyond New York in the early days of TV, a kinescope had to be shipped from station to station. Though grainy and fuzzy, these were for a time the only way of capturing live shows. But in 1951 Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball decided to film their comedy show rather than to broadcast it live, and in a few years live broadcast comedy and drama had vanished from the airwaves. Telekinesis, the movement of objects without contact or other physical means, as by the exercise of an occult power. Fascinated by telekinesis as a boy, he'd spend hours in his room trying to push a pencil off the table using only his mind. Tele, in Greek, means far off, see tele. The eternally appealing idea of moving an object remotely, using only psychic powers, has had a long life in films, TV shows, stories and novels, video games, and comics. But although some researchers believe in the existence of telekinesis, also known as psychokinesis, most scientists believe that any reported experiences have been the result of fraud, wishful thinking, or naturally explainable events. Dynam comes from the Greek dynamis, meaning power. A dyne is a unit used in measuring force. An instrument that measures force is called a dynamometer. And when Alfred Nobel invented a powerful explosive in 1867, he named it dynamite. Dynamic, 1. Relating to physical force or energy. 2. Continuously and productively active and changing, energetic or forceful. The situation has entered a dynamic phase, and what we knew about it last week has changed considerably by now. Dynamic is the opposite of static, which means not moving or active. So all living languages, for example, are dynamic rather than static, changing from year to year even when they don't appear to be. A bustling commercial city like Hong Kong is intensely dynamic, constantly changing and adapting. A dynamic relationship, for example, the relationship between housing values and interest rates charged by banks, is one that changes all the time. Unfortunately, the word has been used so much by advertisers that we tend to forget its basic meaning. Dynamo, 1. A power generator, especially one that produces direct electric current. 2. A forceful, energetic person. Even as they entered the power plant, the roar of the water covered the sound of the immense dynamos. The dynamo was introduced in 1832 to produce electricity for commercial use. Like all later generators, the original dynamos changed mechanical energy, produced by steam, which was itself produced by burning coal, into electricity. The word is less used today than it once was, since it's often applied only to generators that produced direct electric current (DC), rather than alternating current (AC), which is now the standard. A human dynamo is a person who seems to have unlimited energy, such as New York's legendary mayor Fiorello LaGuardia, whose forcefulness and vigor matched that of his intensely dynamic city. Aerodynamics 1. A science that studies the movement of gases such as air and the way that objects move through such gases. 2. The qualities of an object that affect how easily it is able to move through the air. Early automobile designs were based on the box-like carriages drawn by horses, back when no one was even thinking about aerodynamics. Aerodynamics began as a science around the time of the Wright brothers' first manned flights. Since then, it's become important to the building not only of aircraft and automobiles, but also of rockets and missiles, trains, ships, and even such structures as bridges and tall buildings, which often have to withstand strong winds. An aerodynamic vehicle is one whose design helps it achieve the greatest speed and most efficient use of fuel. But although we might casually call any sleek car design aerodynamic, true aerodynamics is practiced not by artistic product designers but instead by highly trained scientists, and many people's lives depend on their work.